Including organ meats in you and your dog's diet can have profound benefits on the health of you and your dog. And if you're an avid hunter like me, sourcing your organs from the deer that you hunt is a fantastic option that is not only going to ensure that you get the most nutrient-dense organs that you could possibly get, but it's also 100% free. And I think it goes without saying, that is an amazing benefit. Welcome to Apex, my name's Jacob, and in this video, I'm gonna show you exactly what organs I take from the deer that I hunt, which ones I keep for myself, which ones I give to my dog, which ones we share, and why I keep the organs I keep. So what I have in front of me, we'll start with this pile right here. I've got some lungs, in the middle is the trachea, and then in between all of that is the heart, which is still surrounded with the membrane. This pile here is the exact same thing because I harvested 2 deer this year. And this pile, I don't know if you can see it, but this one, this is the belly flaps. It's basically the meat that goes around the stomach. And then I've got 2 tracheas in here as well. It's the upper part of what's in that pile. And then I've got a set of kidneys here with all the fat around there. This is suet. So this is the stuff that makes amazing tallow. I've got another pile of 2 kidneys and the suet, which tallow. And then over here on the right side of me, I've got 2 livers. If you're eating meat or you're eating a carnivore diet, or if you're feeding your dog the same, which hopefully you are because hyperprocessed kibble is absolutely horrible, then it can be very important to include organs in your diet and in your dog's diet to make sure you round out the nutrients. Because these organs in front of me are essentially nature's multivitamin. These organs contain more bioavailable nutrients than any other food on the planet. And they are also very complete protein sources, very healthy fats, cholesterol, saturated fat. Like I mentioned, they have a vast array of vitamins like vitamin E, A, D, K, C, which is one thing that people say you can't get on a carnivore diet. But I can assure you that if you include these organ meats in your diet, you're going to get plenty of vitamin C. They also have things like potassium, pretty much all the B vitamins, magnesium, selenium, phosphorus, all the essential amino acids, and moderate amounts of every other vitamin and mineral out there. So by including these in your diet, it's going to round out nutrition and you will never have to worry about nutritional deficiencies for you or your dog. But I will say that the important thing about organs is not to overdo it, because there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. I have a couple videos on my channel talking about that. And for example, like liver, if you consume liver too often, there is a chance of overloading on copper, which could cause problems down the road. It could lead to things like iron overload. It could lead to heart palpitations, muscle cramps, general lethargy, and a lot of really unwanted side effects. So it's just important to trust your gut, trust your intuition, and only include these things when your body's actually craving them. So listening to your body can be very important. When it comes to your dog, it pays to think about this in very simplistic terms. All right, so if your dog was in the wild, it would be with a pack, and that pack would kill one animal, maybe one animal per week, because wolves in the wild, you know, they could go a week or 2 without eating. When they eat, they could eat 20 pounds of meat in a single sitting. But when that pack of wolves takes an animal and consumes it, that's going to be split amongst all the different wolves. And that's very important to note because these organs make up a very small piece of the animal's body. You think about this deer that I took, it was probably 150-pound deer, and here's a kidney, you know, here's the other kidney. It's very, very small amounts, and that's going to be split amongst the pack. There could be some wolves that get some of this. There might be some wolves that don't. So from my experience, the best thing you can do for your dog is just include very small amounts of these things sporadically in the dog's diet. So personally, I do not include organs in every single one of my dog's meal. I space it out. I'll do, you know, maybe a little bit of kidney one day, maybe a week later, I'll do a small piece of liver, and then a few days later, I'll do some heart. And I kind of rotate things in and out because there's no such thing as balance in nature. Balance happens over a period of time, and that is how the natural world works. You will never get a perfectly balanced meal in nature for every single meal unless the animal is consuming a small animal every single meal and it's consuming that animal in its entirety. But that simply does not happen. So with that out of the way, since I have the kidneys in front of me, I'll just go over what I'm going to do with these kidneys here. All right, so I've got 2 kidneys. I'm basically just going to separate the fat off these things, which is very, very simple. Just come in here, cut this off. Now, the good thing about deer fat is it's much higher in stearic acid than beef fat. So it makes it very dry and waxy, and you can actually just kind of peel this away. And it's very, very easy to take off. And it also makes much better tallow than beef fat as well. So I just basically separate my kidneys out, and then I'm going to put all this fat in a separate pile. And this is going to be used for tallow. Basically, that's it. I mean, that is literally it. It's very, very simple. Any scrap meat that I have, like the stuff that was in that tray I showed you, that all goes to my dog. So like membranes and stuff, You can cut the membrane off these kidneys. I leave it intact because it is collagen and I love to consume collagen. So I'm just gonna cut these things up into little coins, and that's how I package them up in the freezer. Like I said, I'm leaving the membrane on, and these kidneys will get split between me and my dog. And one of the reasons I like kidneys, you can see the inside there, is because they're very high in DAO. So when I came to carnivore, I had a very bad histamine intolerance. And through my research and stuff, I found out that DAO is actually one of the reasons for histamine intolerance. So your body's ability to produce DAO on its own kind of gets limited, and that can happen for various reasons. But if you're suffering from histamine intolerance, that's likely one of the root problems, is that your DAO is low in your body, and your body probably cannot produce DAO on its own. So by consuming kidney, because it's so high in DAO, it actually replenishes the DAO in your body, and it also boosts your body's ability to start creating DAO on its own. And when that happens, your histamine intolerance will go away. Now, there's a bunch of other factors that come into play. For example, leaky gut. You will never fully heal a histamine intolerance until you get that situated, you get that under control. And, the best way to do that is consume collagen-rich foods. All right, kidneys done. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the lungs and heart next. I always do the liver last because deer liver is extremely strong as far as taste goes. And if you use the same cutting board for the, all these different organs and stuff like I'm doing right here, then that flavor of that liver is going to get in everything. So I want to avoid that. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over. I'll do this big one first. And again, this is kind of a mess, but this is part of being a carnivore. This is what carnivore is. If we didn't have grocery stores, this is what every single one of us would be doing every single day. All right. So it's a harsh reality, but it is reality. And also another quick note, I am going to put a bunch of resources in the description below. The first one is going to be a farm map. So if you don't hunt and you can't source animals yourself, then I did build a directory that has over 7,200 local farms and butcher shops all over the country. All right, I built that for everybody to use. It's 100% free to use. Go on there, use that, support your local farmers, support your local ranchers and producers, buy your meat locally, and get the most high quality nutrient dense food you can possibly get. And most of those producers are also going to have organ meats like this. Some of them won't have stuff like lungs, but most of them will have heart and liver and kidney. And I'm also going to put a link to a document that's going to have all the nutritional information for all these organs in there. So if you're curious as to what exactly these organs have in them, that document is going to show you all that. So what I'm doing here, I'm just basically separating the heart from the lungs. All right, so there's the lungs there, and there's a membrane that basically connects the two. Again, this is very messy. All right, if you don't like blood and that kind of stuff, you probably should be watching this video. Now, around the heart, there's going to be a thick membrane. All right, so I'm going to trim that membrane off. There's a lot of fat around this as well. All the fat's going to go in the soot pile. The membrane itself is going to my dog. And I usually just feed this kind of stuff to her raw. All right, so the membrane's separated. Again, I'm just going to, matter of fact, I just pulled this fat off. Because again, it does tear off pretty easily. And then what I'll be left with is the membrane. Fat's off. And then the membrane and the upper part of the artery, which again is very, very rich in collagen. And the great thing about heart, the reason I love heart, and this, I keep most of this for myself, by the way. I will give a little bit of this to my dog, but I'm a huge fan of heart, especially after learning about coenzyme Q10, which I just did a video about, and I can put a link in the description below to that video. But that is an essential nutrient that most people are going to be deficient in, and essentially it helps your body create ATP, which is responsible for the transfer of energy of the cells within your body. So it is very, very important. And I just did a video about that, so I'm not going to go too in depth about that in this video, but just know that CoQ10 has a lot of benefits on your overall health, and the same thing goes for your dog. It has protective benefits. It can help protect you from things like cancer and free radical damage in the body. It also has protective benefits on your heart and a lot of benefits in terms of longevity. And if you do want to learn more about CoQ10, I encourage you to watch that video. But what I just did here with this heart is I basically just coined it up into small sections, and I'm just going to package this up in freezer paper just like that. All right, so very good stuff here. Again, kind of a mess. It is bloody, all right, but this is reality. And something else that's kind of interesting and worth noting is that if you want to improve the health of a certain part of your body, like let's say your heart, for example, then including heart in your diet can be very fundamental in doing that. And, somebody told me this one time, like a long time ago when I first started my healing journey, that if you want to improve a certain part of your body, then consume that part from an animal. And that's essentially what you would be doing by consuming heart. Because it has CoQ10 in it, it is protective on the heart and it helps the heart. And as a matter of fact, it's been shown to reverse things like congestive heart failure. So, it makes sense that consuming the part of the animal that you're trying to heal would be beneficial, because that part of the animal is going to have all the nutrients in it that that part in your body has. So when you think about it in those very basic terms, it really makes sense. All right, so I've got the lungs here, and you can see the trachea in the middle, the lungs on the side here. Now I'm just going to cut this trachea out, and this is going to be 100% for my dog. And then the lungs are mostly going to be for my dog. I've actually never tried lung before, but I think I'm going to do it this year because I am very curious, and there's supposed to be a lot of benefits of consuming lung as well. And ironically enough, just like I mentioned, there are a lot of benefits on your respiratory system, specifically the lungs. And that is likely because lungs from the animal contain all the nutrients that are needed for your lungs to be healthy. All right, so trachea is out. Those are very good for dogs, by the way. They actually sell those in dog stores. You can get them like dehydrated and stuff. I think you can get them online as well. But they're essentially like dog treats, and they're very, very healthy for your dog. The good thing about lungs and trachea and stuff like that is there is a lot of collagen in there, as well as B vitamins. And lungs, just like all the other organs, have pretty much every vitamin, mineral, and essential nutrient that you need to thrive. So the only difference is that the amounts that are in these different organs are going to be different depending on what you're consuming. And I think that's where it benefits different parts of your body differently, because the amount that's present is going to differ, and it's going to be more aligned to the part that you're consuming. But there also will be very unique nutrients in each one of these different organs. So that's another reason why it's beneficial for the different parts of your body. All right, so for these lungs, because they are very, very like spongy, and they're kind of very messy and wet, I'll probably end up packaging these up in freezer bags. I don't like using freezer bags because they're essentially all plastic, but for the sake of not making a huge mess in my freezer by using freezer paper, plastic bag's probably gonna be the best option. And I'm gonna get a larger knife here. This is a fillet knife, works very well for this kind of stuff. And another good thing about organs like lung and stuff like that is that you could also dehydrate this, like cut it up in real small pieces and dehydrate it, and that would make fantastic treats for your dog. And if you're into consuming things like lung or liver and kidney, then you could dehydrate them, and that's something that you could share with your dog as well. And ancestral supplements, they have all these different organs in supplement form. And there's a lot of people that buy that stuff, but the actual organ itself in its like natural state is always going to be more healthy than a desiccated organ supplement, just because it's in its natural form. It hasn't been heated, it hasn't been dehydrated, it hasn't really been processed other than you cutting it up and putting it in the freezer. But when it comes to nutrient density and preserving the quality of the nutrients in the organ, keeping it in its raw form and just lightly cooking it is going to be the best option. And when it comes to organs, it is also important not to overcook them, because the more you cook them, the more nutrient loss you're going to have. It does degrade the nutrients in there. Some people consume this stuff raw. Personally, I don't really do that, but I do lightly cook it. I just make sure not to cook it all the way through and essentially scorch it, because that's where your nutrient loss is going to come from. All right, so there's all my lung cut up from the one deer. I'm just going to repeat that same process on the other. All right, so on this one, again, coming in here, I'm going to split this thing here. And you can see once that membrane's cut out or cut open, the heart will just slip right out of there. All right, and then you're going to have the arteries at the top, and you can literally just come in here, cut the arteries, and then the heart comes out perfect. And I would highly encourage you, if you haven't tried heart and you're curious about it and you're willing to consume organs, things like heart, I would definitely include that in your diet. Again, it's important not to overdo it, but CoQ10 is just such an amazing nutrient that you'd really be doing yourself a huge disservice by not including it in your diet. All right, so this whole piece right here with the membrane and the arteries, and actually the trachea is included in this as well, that's all dog food right there. And I'm probably just going to cut that up into like 3 or 4 pieces, and then I'll package that up, probably in freezer bags as well, because it is very, very messy. Now, when it comes to organs, there are a couple organs that you do not want to consume and you do not want to give to your dog. All right, so starting from the top, the first thing would be the eyes. You do not want to consume eyes. You don't want to give those to your dog. The spinal cord, the spleen, the tongue, and the lymph nodes. All of those you want to put back into nature. So give them to the coyotes, give them to the buzzards, or dispose of them properly. And the reason for that is because certain deer can have chronic wasting disease, which is a prion disease. And that isn't transferable to humans, but it's not good to consume a deer that is possibly infected with that. And you know, if a deer is not showing any symptoms of that, it's still possible that it's infected, you just don't know it. And by not including those organs, it's going to mitigate your risk of consuming a deer that is possibly carrying that disease. All right, and that also includes the brain as well. So those are the organs that you should not consume. Don't take those from the animal, just leave them there. But everything else is pretty much fair game. And as a matter of fact, when I get through all this, I'm going to take you out and show you the tripe that I took from the deer as well, which if you're not familiar with tripe, that is the stomach of the animal. And green tripe just basically means that it's washed out, like the contents are washed out, but it's not thoroughly washed and bleached. And that has a lot of amazing benefits for your dog as well, because it preserves all the nutrients in the tripe, and it also maintains a lot of that beneficial bacteria, and just really provides the dog with an organ that is going to be in its most nutrient dense bioavailable form that you can possibly get. All right, so last but not least is the liver. So I'm sure most of you, if you're watching this video and you're carnivore, you're probably very familiar with liver. Liver is also very, very beneficial. It's essentially nature's multivitamin, but like I mentioned before, it is important not to overconsume liver because it can be problematic. Some more dog food, that's some membrane and stuff right there. And there's quite a bit of membrane on the back side of this. So most of that membrane, like this is actually muscle right here that got pulled off from the inside of the animal. So I'm just going to come in here and trim all this off. And then all the muscle and stuff that's from this, that's going to be all for my dog right there. There's some fat in there too, which I'll take off. All right, so the thing about deer liver that you need to keep in mind if you do this is that there is a very hard, not really hard, but it's a very tough membrane on the outside. All right, so that is, let me clean it off a little bit so you can kind of see it. But you can see the whitish color here. That's the membrane around the liver itself. All right, so I always leave that on there. I don't really mind consuming that because when you cook it, it does kind of cook down and it's not as tough. But some people like to trim that off, so that's totally up to you on how you want to do it. But this thing I'm going to treat just like I did the hearts, and I'm going to basically just cut it up into sections, and that's how I'll package it up. I'm going to also package this in freezer bags. Now you could also use like a seal meal, and that would be a great option. It would probably keep longer that way. If you use freezer paper, just make sure it's sealed very, very tightly because it does make a mess. I've done that before and it's gotten everywhere inside my freezer. And when it comes to liver, my dog specifically, she does not tolerate liver very well. If I give it to her too often, it makes her violently ill. And I've seen that with other dogs as well. And, you know, I think that is a big problem these days because people hear, you know, liver is a multivitamin, it's great for your dog and stuff, and they include it too much. And it can make your dog really, really sick. It can cause vitamin toxicity, mineral toxicity, and essentially heavy metal poisoning through all the copper and stuff that's in it. So I would not recommend feeding liver very often. And when you do, I would do only very small amounts. The moment your dog starts getting lethargic or slightly ill, you know, things like diarrhea or vomiting, nausea, things like that, that is a very clear indicator that you're giving your dog way too much liver or way too many organs. So you need to scale that way back. There's the liver all cut up, and you can see that that's quite a bit of organ meat. So, I mean, if you were to throw all this stuff out, you can see how much you would waste. You know, I mean, and again, this is, it might not be very visually appealing, and most people, you know, it kind of grosses them out and stuff, but this is the most nutrient-dense parts of the animal. So by throwing this away, you're essentially throwing away the best part of the animal. All right, so last thing, trachea. I'm going to go ahead and just cut this up. I'm going to use my bigger knife for this because it is kind of hard. And then this, because it's so awkward, you can see it's literally the windpipe. I'm also going to put this in freezer bags. As much as I don't like using plastic, it's really convenient. It's kind of hard to get away from. All right, and then I do have some belly flap meat here, which is very, very thick tendon on there. And that's why I don't keep this for myself sometimes. Sometimes I will, and I'll cook it down and I'll make like roast out of it, because if you long cook this in a crock pot, it does cook down and it has amazing collagen in there. And you can essentially use it like a pulled venison, like pulled pork, or you can use it as a roast. Makes great chili, you know, stuff like that if you're into that kind of thing. But usually I'll just use it, like I'll put it in a crock pot, cook it down, let it get good and tender, and then just consume it like a roast. All right, so that's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this stuff packaged up. I always wait and do the organs last because I like having clean cutting boards. I like keeping a very sanitized station when I'm cutting up my meat. And the organs, since they do come from the inside, and a lot of times if you shoot the animal, there's gonna be a lot of stuff that gets damaged in there, and you know, things can leak out essentially inside the chest cavity. And there's just a lot more risk of contamination in there. So I get my meat done first, I keep it very, very clean, and then I do my organs last, so I don't have to worry about cross-contamination. And then for the tripe, I'm definitely doing that dead last, because that's stomach, and that's going to have contamination by nature. So once I'm done packaging everything up, I'll take care of that, and that'll be the last thing to get packaged up and go in the freezer. And then I'm going to do my roll-up method, so you kind of like roll it up like a burrito. So basically you just move everything into the corner closest to you, and then roll it to the far corner. So I'm just gonna roll it straight up. And then once you get like 2 rolls, then you're gonna fold the corners in. And then roll it the rest of the way up. And that creates a very tight seal. It's very quick and easy to do that. Just like that. All right, so that a lot of times will keep things from leaking out also. Now for my lung, that's gonna go in the bags here. And the way I usually use bags is I'll put just enough in there, like I don't overstuff them. So I'll show you here. I just put enough in there where I can kind of flatten it out. That way it doesn't take up as much room in the freezer, and I can stack it a lot easier in there. All right, so that looks like a good amount there. Now I just push this down, kind of get all the air out of it as much as I can, and then flatten it out. And you can see that will lay in the freezer much easier and take up a lot less space than if you were to pack it plumb full. And you can stack these up pretty high in there. Now if you've got a seal-a-meal or a vacuum sealer, that's even better, which I do have one, but I'm trying to save some time here. So this is what I'm going with for my lung. All right, so I've got 2 green tripes here. These are the stomachs from the deer. And these are 100% solely for my dog. To prep these, I just took them out of the animal, flipped them inside out, took my garden hose, hosed them out. There's a lot of folds and stuff in here you got to kind of open up to get all the junk out of there. It is kind of a nasty job. I'm not going to lie, it stinks and it's not really that pleasant. But to get these prepped up for the freezer, I've already had them sitting in ice. I've got them rinsed out real well. So I'm just going to use my kitchen scissors and I'm going to cut these things up into sections. And then I'm just going to put them in freezer bags and store them that way. They are pretty wet and it is kind of messy, so that's why I'm not using freezer paper. But freezer bags or seal-a-meal bags, vacuum seal bags would be perfect for this. But I'll just do sections like this. I'll freeze it, and then when I'm ready to feed it out, this is best served raw, so that's how I'm going to feed it. So if you have your dog on a raw diet, this can be very, very beneficial. There are so many great nutrients in here, and stomach is pretty much mostly collagen. I mean, this is all essentially like a membrane type material, and it is very, very collagen rich. So if you're looking to get more collagen in your dog's diet, this is the way to do it. Now I personally, I do eat tripe as well, but I eat the kind from like my local producer, so it has been cleaned and bleached. And the only negative to that is that you are going to have a lot of nutrient loss in that. And then additionally, a lot of the beneficial stuff that comes along with green tripe, because it has the native bacteria and all that stuff that's already in the tripe and the enzymes, it's not going to be in there. Because the moment you heat it up and the moment you start like cleaning it and bleaching it, then you're going to take a lot of that stuff out of there. Now you will have nutrients obviously, but it's going to be mostly like proteins, essential amino acids, and things like collagen. that's pretty much all that's going to be left. You will have some vitamins and minerals, but it's going to be drastically reduced because it's been like boiled and bleached and treated however they treat it to basically disinfect it. And the good thing about this also is that the stomach's pretty big, so there's quite a bit here. I mean, as far as material goes, there's quite a bit of food. So, you know, it's going to go a long way because this stuff here, it's only going to make up a small portion of the dog's diet. And when you think about structuring your dog's meal, you kind of want to structure it in a way that would mimic nature. So in other words, you know, it's going to be mostly muscle meat. You're going to have like 10% bone, somewhere around there. And then organs is going to make up, you know, like 2%. It's going to be a very small amount. And that'll be something like 2% secreting organs, 2% muscular organs. And the stomach, you know, I would kind of consider that a muscular organ. It's not a secreting organ. A secreting organ would be things like liver, spleen, kidney. And then muscular organs would be things like gizzard, stomach, heart. And if you hear that crunching over there, that's my dog's actually chewing on the leftover vertebrae that's over there. And recreational bones can be great for your dog. The only thing you have to pay attention to is just not to buy recreational bones that are super hard and dense. So like what she's chewing on right now, like the vertebrae and the rib bones and stuff, it's all very soft bone that she can actually chew through. But if you give a dog like some of those big bones that sell in the grocery store that are made to be recreational bones, but they come from like a cow femur or something like that, those bones are way too dense and they can really damage your dog's mouth. They could cause tooth fractures, and if they swallow shards of that bone, because those bones are usually roasted or cooked or heated in some capacity, then they're going to be very hard to digest, and they're very sharp also. So they could damage your dog's mouth, throat, or cause choking, or even damage the stomach or the intestines. So not a good thing. But raw bone, like what she's chewing on there, it's going to be perfectly digested. There's not a problem with that at all. All right, so that's that. So to package it up, I'm just going to put it in my freezer bags, and I'm going to do it the same way I did the other stuff. So I'll do it maybe about halfway full, that way I can flatten it out. And then I'm just going to put this directly in the freezer. I'll probably keep a couple small pieces out so I can feed that to her tonight. So I know she's looking forward to this. She was actually trying to take off with it when I was out there cleaning it the other day. So flatten it out. And that'll be how it goes in the freezer. So if you like this and you got some value out of this, comment the word venison below. And let me know what kind of organs you include in you and your dog's diet. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to like, subscribe, join the Apex Tribe. I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace out.